Britain looks to boost trade ties with Africa after the UK leaves the European Union, but it is a problematic project that some have called Empire 2.0.
Nigeria security operatives go to a 3-day forum on border control and look to other nations for assistance with regional security strategies.
And an activist in Uganda comes up with a novel approach to encourage young people to protect themselves against HIV. We'll tell you how. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello, I'm Chamberlain Oso at Channels Television here in Lagos. Welcome to our show that brings you top stories and news you can use from across the continent.
And I'm Esther Gidui Ewart of Voice of America, coming to you from our Studio 51 at our global headquarters here in Washington. We start with our story about the groundbreaking meeting in Nigeria. Chamberlain?
Well, that's right. Nigeria security operatives and international agencies gathered at a 3-day regional forum on border control and agreed on the need to harmonize security strategies at the meeting that was the first of its kind. Here's our report.
Nigeria, a country with land borders stretching over 4,000 kilometers with neighboring countries of Benin, Chad, Cameroon, Niger, and maritime space with Equatorial Guinea, recently played host to security operatives from the African continent. Over time, there's been series of security challenges along the borders. Crimes ranging from armed banditry, smuggling, drug and human trafficking, among others, have taken center stage. This gathering of top officials of international organizations, senior security executives from Nigeria and her neighbors, focuses on strengthening cross-border capacities to combat crime and terrorism.
This is the very first time that we bring together border officials and law enforcement agencies from the neighboring countries of Nigeria to discuss these issues, specifically border control with regard to organized crime and terrorism. And based on that, hopefully we can develop a kind of a roadmap, what will be the next steps and what we have to address next.
Participants highlight the need to chart a new course.
We are fully aware that the issue of border security has impacted negatively on our nation, especially with the issue of Boko Haram. It is believed that most of the illegal arms that come into the country are from our borders. So we are trying to see how we could synergize our effort with our friendly neighboring countries to enhance our border security.
This workshop is very important for us, Nigeria and Cameroon mainly, to share experience, because we have a lot of frameworks in charge of fighting all these threats. Nigeria also, they have their own framework, so we need to exchange experience, exchange information on different threats to harmonize our fighting against security problems.
What are the new structures that are?
As the session comes to a close, these representatives are hopeful that the consensus reached would go a long way to curb cross-border crimes.
You're watching Africa 54. Let's talk more now about Nigeria's border and international security situation. For that, we're joined by retired Captain Umar Aliyu. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Good morning.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about the borders. Are our borders porous?
Yes.
Wow.
They are porous. This is not speculation. This is not politics. It's just the facts. And I'll give you figures so you can do the maths yourself. We have like 4,047 kilometers of border lines. Of these 4,047 kilometers, 853 are coastal border lines. Okay? The balance of the rest is landed border lines. Cameroon has a 1,600 plus kilometers borderline with Nigeria. Benin Republic has about 773 kilometers. And Niger has over 1,400. Now, over these 4,047 border lines, we're looking at 84 regular entry points and about over 1,400 irregular entry points. What are regular entry points? Where you find our customs officers and establishments and you go through the normal processes. The irregular ones are in the creeks, over the mountains, and what have you. Now, what percentage of 1,497 is 84? That's 5.6. So if we were to go about 84 to 1,497, our borders are 5.6% manned or 5.6% secure. So you're looking at a deficit of 94.4% porosity.
That's clearly some challenge. But how do you suggest we tackle this border incursions?
With the figures I've given you, we cannot secure our borders manually, more like virtually. We must begin to tune into 2017 Earth solutions for border security. That's just putting it aptly.
Well, clearly we'll have some security challenges as well. What will your suggestions be that we tackle these threats in the African region?
Within the African region, as in West Africa per se, there is this malaise that runs through our leaders. Our leaders are not just in tune with governance per se. They are more like in tune with power sustenance. If you want to be in tune with governance, you have to go right down there. The leaders have to come together. We have relatively the same problems. And what are these problems? It's a willy-nilly leadership. Leaderships that don't listen. They don't put an ear to the ground and get information not from up there at the apex of the pyramid, but at the bottom of the pyramid.
Would you say it's easier or difficult to tackle border challenges in the West African region, for instance, in the light of the ECOWAS Treaty and the arrangements that we have?
Yes, it's difficult because we are not factoring in globalization and its effects. Globalization has positive upsides, negative downsides. The same way globalization has made the world a small village, it has also made crime possible and borders probably non-existent. That's the problem with our borders. And you know, there is this romance between border security and national security, as it were. So we really need to take a more, circumspect and, focused approach to border security.
Can we then say, in the light of all that you've highlighted, can our borders be secured?
Oh, yes. You see, look at it this way, the upside now. If we were just 5.6% secure, it means there is room, there is 94.4% room for improvement. That should get us excited, shouldn't it? There's so much room for improvement because there's so much to do. And by so doing, you're going to create opportunities, you're going to create other avenues that will bring about even more good than we have now.
Child Captain Umar Aliyu, thank you for talking to us today on Africa 54.
You're most welcome.
Now to the Central African Republic, where aid workers are warning that the country may be sliding back into conflict, and the UN says relief efforts are dangerously underfunded. Reporter Zach Badov has more on that story.
Resurging violence in the Central African Republic has left some villages emptied and destroyed. 100,000 people have fled their homes since September. In the north, predominantly Christian anti-Balaka rebels used the town of Bambara as a base. But after they stole some cows from nearby nomadic people, the mostly Muslim ex-Seleka militia came for revenge, killing about 25 people and burning more than 600 houses.
My father died of old age, but when my big brother was killed, I was very shocked by that. I will always remember what happened here. That's the trace of the bullet. They shot at me, too.
The violence recalls the fighting and communal clashes that plunged the country into chaos nearly 4 years ago. Aid workers say the renewed violence has been a major setback.
They don't have food, they don't have seeds, they don't have mats to sleep on, they don't have potable water. So everything was destroyed in these events, so they are starting from zero.
Meanwhile, at the camp for displaced persons in nearby Ndim, a group of herders have had to flee twice due to fighting over the past few months.
The future for us is truly in the hands of God, because the population of the nearby village are the ones protecting us. We don't have any say in the matter.
The village chief says the anti-Balaka attacked and stole about 150 of their cows. They moved and started growing maize and manioc, but they were attacked again. 1/5 of the country's population is currently displaced. Doctors Without Borders says civilians are being attacked at levels not seen in years. MSF runs a clinic in Paua in the northwest of the country, but says it continues to struggle to access remote areas in need.
Central Africa is one of the poorest countries in the world and needs to be supported. But the people are focusing on the conflict, but it takes time for people to solve it.
Despite the growing need, the UN says just 10% of the required humanitarian funding for the year has been received. UN humanitarian coordinator Najat Rochdi says this could have a disastrous effect.
Otherwise, we are just feeding the ground of armed groups who would come back to the population and just tell them, look, the international community, they don't care. The UN, they don't care. Look, you don't even have food on your table. You don't even have schools for your kids. So we need also, just to fight against that.
The World Food Programme has been forced to cut its food aid by almost half, from 700,000 people last year to 400,000 people this year. Zach Badorf for VOA News, Paua, Central African Republic.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, as it savors its official ties to the European Union, Britain looks to the continent for trade. But is that path impeded by its colonial history? That story after the break.